in the extremely popular fan game / ROM hack known as Pokémon Insurgence, adds new Delta species, Megas, Primals, and more. Even a new weather condition is introduced, known as Darkness. Darkness has many interactions with, well, you guessed it, Dark types. But not just Dark types. It also has interactions with Ghost, Fairy, and even the Water type. Functionally, Darkness acts very similarly to the Sun and Rain weather conditions, boosting certain Pokemon types while weakening others. In Darkness, Ghost and Dark-type moves are boosted by 35%, while Fairy is weakened by 25%. Unlike Sun and Rain, the respective types of moves affected aren't boosted or weakened by 1/2. Why did Insurgents do this? Well, I don't know. But what I can guess is that Dark and Ghost are way stronger offensive types than both Water and Fire. So if these boosted Ghost and Dark by 50%, I don't even want to know the chaos they would cause. Darkness, like all weathers, affects certain powerful abilities. There is also an ability that triggers Darkness itself, being Noctum. Noctum is shared by 3 Pokemon in Insurgence: Spiritomb, Lunatone, and Mega Delta Charizard. Of these, Spiritomb is by far the best setter. But why? Doesn't Mega Delta Charizard sound the best? It shares the same stats as Mega Charizard Y, who is extremely powerful, setting up its own sun. Well, remember how I was talking about the differences between Darkness and Sun's type boosts earlier? Well, this affects Delta Charizard's damage output significantly, using a much weaker stab attack in Shadow Ball. Compared to Charizard Y's Weather Ball or Fire Blast, it's extremely weak on top of the fact that Shadow Ball is only boosted by 35% compared to Fire type's 50% in Sun. These differences make Mega Delta Charizard a relatively middling Darkness abuser. This is mainly stemming from the fact that it's a Ghost type and not a Dark type. We'll talk about how important this is later. Delta Charizard isn't a great setter either because it's a Mega, meaning it's not able to hold the unique Dark Rock item from Insurgence. Not to mention Delta Charizard is somewhat frail to be a long-lasting Darkness setter. Okay, we understand now that Mega Delta Charizard isn't the greatest. What about the other two? Lunatone I don't really think is worth the mention. With a typing that hurts itself in Darkness against opposing Ghost and Dark types, its only real use is as a niche suicide lead Darkness setter with Explosion and setting up Stealth Rock. In general, it's just pretty bad. On the other hand, we have the Darkness King, the deceptively powerful Spiritomb. But how can it be Spiritomb, a Pokemon that has had no real competitive history since its debut generation all the way back in Generation 4 UU? Well, it turns out when you have relatively usable defensive stats with the right investment, strong stabs in Knockoff, Sucker Punch, Shadow Ball, Shadow Sneak, and the newly introduced Lunar Cannon, which we'll talk about later, it makes a tough out. Spiritomb, coupled with its excellent defensive typing, that's only bolstered by the slight weakening of fairies, support options like Toxic, Will-O-Wisp, and Destiny Bond, and the decent healing and disruptive properties of Pain Split, Spiritomb becomes a shockingly bulky but annoying weather setter that forces progression by removing items and crippling your physical attackers. So moving on to the abilities that abuse Darkness. Shadow Dance is a Swift Swim / Chlorophyll clone, meaning that your speed doubles in Darkness. In Insurgence, this is given to 4 fully evolved Pokemon: Delta Blastoise, Delta Electivire, Delta Roserade, and Mega Shiftry. Of these, Delta Roserade is by far the best. With the Dark Fairy typing, Roserade gets to spam Darkness boosted attacks with items like Choice Specs or Life Orb without much punishment outside of priority, since most Pokemon are blitzed by it under Darkness. Roserade also isn't terribly hindered by the Fairy type nerf in Darkness, as it's not a significant enough nerf for it to miss the kills on most of its prime targets. A new powerful move introduced in Insurgence is Lunar Cannon. Lunar Cannon is a 105 base power special Dark type attack that usually takes 2 turns, but in Darkness, Lunar Cannon alongside Phantom Force and Shadow Force are all used instantly, making them very powerful as they also enjoy the boost in power from the weather condition. Delta Roserade also carries another Darkness using ability in Heliophobia, which acts similarly to Dry Skin. In Darkness, Heliophobia heals 1/8 of your Pokemon's HP, while in Sun, you lose 1/8. Unlike Dry Skin, however, you don't have any added weakness nor an immunity to any type. Delta Roserade never uses Heliophobia, however, since it's a frail offensive sweeper who doesn't necessarily need that extra healing. 2 abilities which boost your special attack stat in Darkness are Supercell and Absolution. Supercell is exclusive to Mega Delta Typhlosion, which gives Typhlosion a 50% boost to its special attack under Darkness or Rain. Delta Typhlosion, though, much prefers Rain, so it can fire off 100% accurate thunders, but it can use Darkness plenty well too. It's just less common. Absolution, however, is a solar power clone for Darkness, boosting your special attack by 50%, but losing 1/8 of your max HP at the end of every turn. Absolution is shared by 3 fully fully evolved Pokemon: Darkrai, Delta Mega Milotic, and Delta Volcarona. Of these, only Delta Mega Milotic is legal in both Insurgence and Chaos OU formats. The ability is absurd on the other two, but it doesn't see much use on Delta Mega Milotic, as Milotic lacks the speed to really abuse the weather within the short amount of turns Darkness is constrained to, even with Dark Rock. But that's not to say it isn't decent, it just doesn't make much use of the ability. Darkness also affects Castform, which is cute, and nothing else really. The rest of the abilities Darkness effects are pretty niche and not terribly significant, so I'll just show all of them on the screen so you can read before I talk about more affected moves. So for affected moves, Weather Ball is changed to Dark type and doubles in power like every other weather. Moonlight recovers 2/3 instead of 1/2, which is only on Lunatone and Insurgence. Hone Claws gives double the boost, which is insane on certain Pokemon like Delta Metagross Ruin, who can run double setup moves, or what people like to call Double Dance, to essentially be impossible to wall, but this is pretty hard to set up. Surf is also oddly boosted by 50%, and again, the rest of the effects are relatively insignificant in both Insurgence and Chaos OU. So what if Darkness could be abused by other Pokemon that aren't from Insurgence? Well, there's quite a few from our not-so-little fun metagame in Chaos OU, which hosts Insurgence, Uranium, Infinity, Smogon's Cat Project, and Pokéathlon's own Plan of Attack, otherwise known as POA. Some of the prime abusers here are the same as Insurgence: Delta Roserade, Mega Bisharp, and Delta Metagross Ruin. But we also have some Pokemon affected by compatibility across all fan games, like Pharynx from Pokemon Infinity, a Dark Fairy Persian evolution, which abuses the new item from POA in Boomerang, which makes Fling hit twice. Alongside its Technician ability, it's able to fire off fast and boosted flings. Kitsuno from the Cat Project also enjoys the benefits of Darkness, using boosted Hone Claws to spam strong ghost attacks along with its great coverage in close combat. Top that off with the Ghost EMZ, and you're looking at a very fast, very strong physical attacker who can even steal useful abilities with Trace. Arportia is another decent user of Hone Claws, having strong Brave Birds, Wild Charges, and Supercell Slams boosted by Tough Claws, making it one of the hardest Pokemon to wall in the format, but it finds better use out of instant power with the Choice Band item rather than using Hone Claws in Darkness. Some vanilla Pokemon abusers in Dragapult also reap the benefits of Darkness. Pretty much in the same way to Kitsuno, Dragapult abuses Ghost EMZ and instant Phantom Forces to force its way through opposing teams, carrying Dragon Dance and either Will-O-Wisp for substitute to catch a potential free turn to set up a Dragon Dance. Darkrai was another vanilla Mon that abused Darkness, but it's since been banned because of its newly acquired Absolution ability. Absolution made Darkrai utter hell to deal with, firing off extremely powerful and fast lunar cannons, with the only drawback being Absolution tick damage, even having the ability to take on fairy types with Sludge Bomb and Nasty Plot to further its power. Darkrai was banned swiftly because of this and will not be returning to Chaos OU anytime soon. Overall, the Weather of Darkness is quite strong in both Insurgence and Chaos OU by virtue of boosting already strong offensive types. If you want to see Darkness really push to its limits, take a look at Chaos Fusion's OU. Scary stuff. But if you are interested in playing these formats, maybe even using Darkness as a team archetype, please go ahead and check out the Pokéathlon client. We host Insurgence, Uranium, Infinity, and more, Infinite Fusion, and even the newly acquired Super Mario Mon. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Please subscribe, and I'll see you guys in another video. Bye-bye.